Good people of YouTube, I'm the Watch Idiot, and today we have the Seiko Marinemaster SLA021 over here, and I've owned this for almost 2 years now, and right off the bat, I'll tell you that I absolutely love it. And whenever I wear it, I just kind of fall in love with it all over again, just because the experience of wearing it is so unique to this watch in particular. I mean, bear in mind that I'm a guy who prefers wearing 38 to 40 millimeter watches. So yeah, if you're on the fence about taking the plunge and getting this watch, then you've come to the right place, just because I had a lot of doubts about this watch before I got it, but now I probably love it more than when I first got it. So we're gonna take a look at some shots of it outside in the sun to get a real good feel of what it's like in real life. And obviously we're gonna look at some awesome macro shots, because why not? It has a lot of really cool details. And yeah, there are a whole lot of aspects about the watch that are really different in the metal than compared to on paper. And is it worth getting it in 2021, you know, with a whole bunch of, with 2 years of, well, more than 2 years of worth of new releases coming out. So let's take a look. Okay, so let's just get into the dimensions, and the dimensions in this particular video are going to be extra crucial, and I'll have it all the detailed dimensions going on. It's extremely crucial in this particular case, just because the numbers pretty much almost have nothing to do with the way that it actually wears. And yeah, the dial, bezel, and case widths are extremely important in this watch. These make the Marinemaster 300 wear much smaller, much smaller than the 44 millimeter dimension alone would suggest, especially because it has a bezel width of 42 millimeters and a dial width of only 29 millimeters, which is crazy. I mean, it legit doesn't wear much larger than an SKX, and actually visually, it actually looks smaller than my 42 millimeter Tudor Pelagos. So for comparison, my Pelagos dial is 32 millimeters, and the SKX dial is 31.5 millimeters. And actually, just to go even further, my 39 millimeter Black Bay 58 925 is 30.8 millimeters. So, I mean, actually, I went a little bit further and I just like looked up all the dials. I just did all the dial dimensions just because I was curious. And this has the smallest dial of any of my watches, short of the already really small 38 millimeter SKX 013. And this is a 44 millimeter watch. So yeah, I mean, Seiko once again is just proving to be magicians, I guess, when it comes to case design. It's awesome. But on the wrist, you can definitely feel, it, just because, you know, despite all the visual trickery, there's just, you know, no denying that it is a thick and heavy watch. But it still does wear really comfortably, especially if you have it on the right strap or bracelet. Okay, and the other specs include a 300 meter water resistance, which is obviously more than enough, more than any real human being other than saturation divers could ever want. So the movement is the 8L35, which is actually a Grand Seiko movement that's just undecorated. I'm all for it. I mean, might as well get the goods of Grand Seiko movement without having to pay for the decoration, which you'll literally never see on this watch. So I'm all for it. Okay, so now onto the lume, and yeah, this needed its own section just because it's just so insanely incredible. Even compared to an SKX, which has, you know, the Seiko Lume Bright, and it's really bright, this Marinemaster still manages to be on another planet compared to it. It's so amazing to see, and it's easily the best green lume that I've ever experienced. I mean, alongside the Tuna. And also the really nice thing about it is that the application is really well done too. It's super crisp, and it doesn't have any splotches. Everything is lit up the exact same level, and it also you know, fades away at the same rate. And you know, I absolutely love charting it up at night and putting it on my you know, nightstand and literally seeing my ceiling lit up. Like, I'm not even exaggerating over here. I can see green light, and I can see the shadow of my lamp on the ceiling over there. So, oh, it's so cool. Okay, so now let's go on to the case, and the finishing of this case is just incredible. I mean, it's in another league compared to other Seikos. That's just because this has a Zaratsu polishing, which is a polishing technique used by Grand Seiko. And actually, this watch is built in a Grand Seiko facility, specifically the Shizuku Ishii Watch Studio, and that's pretty awesome. I've owned 3 Grand Seiko and I still have 2, and I can say that it's pretty much right up there in terms of the polishing. I mean, it's, oof. It's good. I think the best way to look at this watch is that this is a bargain Grand Seiko as opposed to a really expensive Seiko. So keep that in mind. So this has a monobloc design, which is so cool. I've never had another watch with a monobloc case, and it feels like how you would expect. It feels like an ingot of steel. I mean, it's just it's so solid. The case itself is very tapered. So from the bezel, it flares out and then it cuts back in. And so the actual part that makes contact with your wrist is quite small. So that helps with it wearing very comfortably, and having the polished sides and the flare on the top of the case really helps with it looking much smaller, because all the polished surfaces disappear into your wrist visually. So all you're left with is looking at a 42mm bezel, and then obviously the tiny dial. And also this has a Dia Shield coating on the bracelet and the case, which gives it a kind of a darker look to it, which is pretty cool. And it's pretty effective as far as scratch resistance goes. And yeah, and so the crystal has been upgraded to a flat sapphire crystal from a Harlech crystal. It still has a really cool distortion because I think it's domed on the inside as opposed to the top. So I mean, that is just such a cool look. Okay, so now on to the bezel, and it's amazing, as it should be. So yeah, the grip on it is incredible. Literally, no matter what situation you're in, what the conditions are, hands are wet, gloved, or whatever it is, you're gonna find grip. And I like that they actually designed the grip in a way that's just not a normal coin edge bezel. It's actually pretty handsome and angular, and yeah, it just suits the watch perfectly. And the bezel feel and the clicks themselves are very much Seiko-like, except much higher quality. So yeah, actually let's just listen to it right now. That's good, that's good. Okay, and one of the big changes of this particular generation is the upgrade to a ceramic insert. I'm happy with ceramic. I mean, it's tough, it's gonna look good for a long time. And also, I just love the way that ceramic looks in particular lights and the way it reflects, especially from an angle. And finally, the last little detail about the bezel is that it is a loomed bezel, which is really cool. But I mean, it's only partially loomed. I mean, it's only loomed on the pip, the 5, 10, and 15, 20 minute markers. Okay, so now on to the dial, and the dial is pretty much exactly what I would expect from and want from a diver like this. It's got a matte finish black dial, but it does have a subtle texture to it, which is nice just because it keeps things a little bit interesting. The hands are probably, I would say, the best looking hands out of any handset that I've seen. And I think that this is the detail that really sets this watch off. And what I mean by that is that it's brushed on the top and has bevels on the sides, and you just immediately see that it just oozes quality. There's so many of the watch, so many parts of the watch that just makes me like, oh, it's just so good. And the indices are all applied indices, as you would expect. They're very, very well finished. They aren't hugely three-dimensional, but Seiko did manage, of course, to load them up to the brim with ultra powerful Seiko Lumibright. So we have a date window at the 3 o'clock position, and I mean, I really do think that this is pretty much as good as it gets. It's got a little white frame around it, and the date disc itself, it has a brushed steel look to it. I don't know if it's actually steel, but which is really cool. Okay, so now on to the bracelet, and it's a super solid bracelet. There's no complaints on it on that end, but it's just the little details that make it a little bit of a different story. The actual links are really big, and this can lead to a problem just because it has a bit of a weird fit. So it just barely works on my wrist, but I can definitely see this being an issue for smaller wrists just because it doesn't really conform very nicely to the wrist. So let me just get into the dive extension. I really like the idea of a diver extension on the clasp that you can adjust without taking the watch off. It's a good idea, but just not well executed because it's a little thick, it's a little cumbersome. Also, sometimes when you're taking the watch off, the security buckle engages with the ratchet mechanism. So as you're taking it out, sometimes it just flies open. You know, even with all that stuff, you know, I would have been okay with it, but for me, the deal breaker was the fact that the back end of the security clasp, the security buckle that engages with the ratchet, isn't sharp, but it kind of pokes at my wrist over here. Thankfully, it comes on an accordion rubber strap, which is so comfortable, and it is and super soft. So it is a little bit on the longer side. So as you can see, it kind of comes up over here. But you know, it's longer for a reason. But yeah, I've actually quite liked the fact that it's a little bit longer, and you can see the you know, the accordion part of it, just because it really makes it feel like the tool watch that it is. Okay, and now on to the negatives, and I guess this is much more of like a soft negatives, just because there really isn't anything that I hate about the watch. I guess one of the complaints that I have is that, you know, this watch is a very top heavy watch, and which makes sense because this is literally a chunk of steel. So is going to be heavy. That makes it a little bit hard to wear on a lot of the straps that I really like. So you need a strap that's a bit stronger, a bit stiffer, with enough structure to hold the watch head up. And thankfully, the rubber accordion strap that Seiko provided straight out from the box works really, really well, because it is super soft and really comfortable, but it also has enough structure to it to be able to handle the weight of the watch. And yeah, and as well designed as the case is, and as comfy as the case is, there's just no getting around the fact that it is heavy. Sometimes I find it a little bit tiring to wear if I'm not really doing anything active that day. You know, just sitting around my desk, it can sometimes weigh down on your wrist. But you know, on days that I'm active, it doesn't really bother me at all. So it's just a bit dependent on the situation, I guess. So the final negative is kind of a negative, kind of not really a negative, but it's the price of the watch. It is $2,800, which is the street price of it. And it's not cheap by any definition of the word. And also on top of that, it's obviously not going to be cheap to people who hate on Seiko, who would say, you know, why would I ever pay $2,800 for a Seiko? It's just a Seiko. Like, that's ridiculous. Why? I would just get a Swiss watch for that price, whatever it is. And also, it's you know, it's not cheap for actual Seiko fans and Seiko dive watch fans, you know, like myself. I mean, who might think that, you know, I've already got my, you know, SKX, Samurai, Turtle, Sumo, whatever it is, and you know, I love them and they offer a huge amount of value and quality, which they do. So is there really any point to getting a watch that's, you know, almost in some situations, you know, almost 10 times the price of what SKXs used to be? But actually, if you think about it, the rest of the Seiko lineup, the prices are coming up for better, for worse. And you know, just like the new Captain Willard that came out last year, and also the new 62 mask that came out last year, those are $1,200 now. The price of this watch stay the same. So you're still getting an extremely high level of quality relative to the rest of the lineup, and now it's priced a little bit less high compared to other watches, I guess. So in a way, the value proposition of the watch is getting better and better as time goes and as the prices of the other Seiko watches are going up. And finally, as I mentioned before, the best way to look at this watch is that it is a bargain grand Seiko as opposed to a really expensive Seiko. Okay, so now on to, should you actually buy this watch in 2021? So at first I was hesitant about getting it simply due to the size, because it is undeniably a big watch. But after watching some videos, and one actually showed it next to an SKX, and that's the part when it really changed my mind, just because it really didn't look that much bigger than the SKX despite the dimensions. I mean, after the first month, I mean, it proved to be absolutely amazing and unlike anything I've ever worn. And it was really immediately apparent to me, you know, where that extra money went. Yeah, if you're the same as I was, you have a whole bunch of Seiko divers, and you see, you know, the Marinemaster as sort of the pinnacle of the Seiko dive lineup, but at the same time you still kind of doubt the premium that it demands over the other Seikos. I say, you know, just go for it. It's so value packed, and every single aspect of the watch has been improved and is a step above all the rest of the Seiko divers. When you pick it up and you feel it, you feel the weight of it, you see the gorgeous polished surfaces on the case, and you see the amazingly finished and brushed and polished beveled handset. I mean, you can tell that it is super high quality. So yeah, that all comes down to, you know, should you actually buy it now in 2021, especially when there's been so many new releases that's come out in the meantime. But I still think that if you want a Marinemaster experience, you kind of have to get the Marinemaster, because no matter what, to this day, there isn't really another watch that's quite like it. So yeah, I think that just takes care of everything. And yeah, thanks for watching, and let me know down in the comments what you all think about the watch. You know, is it really worth it? You know, do you own it? Do you love it? Do you hate it? Do you think it's way too much for a Seiko, whatever it may be? Put it down in the comments, because I absolutely love talking to everyone in the comments, and it's easily the best part of posting videos. Also, please do hit the like button. It really, really helps. If you enjoy the video and you want to see more, I mean, subscribe button is there. And if you want to get a better sense of who I am, take a look at all the other videos that I have posted so far, and then hit the subscribe button, because that would be obviously very, very nice. So yeah, until the next time, good day.